to go?
We're ready to go. First, why don't you tell us where we are?
Oh, okay. We are currently sitting at Villa 57, French Lick, Indiana, a timeshare we have been coming to for close to 25 years. The other day, John said, "My God, I've been coming here half my life." He's about to have his 50th birthday.
All right.
Grandpa just had his 80th birthday. I think of myself as 80, but I'm really only 78 at this point. What the hell, what's 2 years?
Okay, so this is Marlene McLennan, no middle name.
Right, no middle name. I was named for Elena Dietrich.
Named from Elena Dietrich.
Right.
All right.
My mother was a movie buff, so am I.
All right. All right. First question is, do you have a philosophy of life to share with your descendants?
Not overall, but the ruling thing in my mind has been, or in my life, has been the life of the mind. To keep the mind alive, to keep the mind active, growing, responsible, the mind.
The mind. And you practice what you preach. You are always reading, you're always doing crosswords, you're always doing puzzles,
I'm always exercising my mind, that's true. Because I firmly believe in the old saying that, use it or lose it.
Yeah. Okay, do you have a favorite philosopher, teacher, or writer?
Years ago, this is now 1990, yeah, right, 2010.
This is 2010.
2010. In 1953, I discovered the existentialists. At that time, we were fresh out of World War II. Existentialism was a philosophy that had grown up in France primarily. A lot of the existential writers were French. And I dearly loved every one of them. So I read a lot of existentialism. The basic thought behind that behind existentialism is, we are here, we are alive, this is the best we can do what you can with it. Hence, the life of the mind.
Okay. Okay, so not a specific philosopher that really stands out.
No, not really. Albert Camus was my favorite writer at that point.
Okay, how about, do you have strong religious beliefs?
Not what people usually talk about as religion. I have strong instincts toward something bigger than mankind. In fact, I sometimes think that mankind is terribly presumptuous in assuming that they are the top of the living world, of the living life here on this earth. But I have a very strong sense of there being an order to everything.
Now, do you think you've always felt that way, or was that something that came later?
It started about age 16, I think. When I used to be. My mother was a big, strong person, a big church person, and we used to go to church every Sunday. And it was only after I started reading as much as I did as a teenager, coming to realize that there's no reason to think that God's any better than Jehovah or the Islamic gods or any of the other gods. It all stems from the same human need for something bigger than they are. And so I just came to believe it exists not in humanity at all, but in the cosmos. It's a goddess below us if there's an organizing principle.
Organizing principle. What things have given you the most pleasure or satisfaction?
A good book. Finding it. When I was younger and was just beginning to read seriously, finding an idea in the book that I was familiar with, that I'd experienced elsewhere. Ah, I know that! The shock of recognition, as it were. The other thing, what was the question again?
The question was, what things have given you the most pleasure,
The most
or
pleasure.
satisfaction?
There's another writer who once said that to seek happiness is an illusion. there's no way you're going to find a state that is a happy state. But what you can look for and anticipate and really enjoy is the sudden stab of joy that you feel every once in a while when things fall right.
Wow, well put. Okay, back to your book. So what does Saturday mean to you, or did Saturday mean to you?
This kind of gets into lifestyle. Saturdays, I think, mean most to me when I remember being a teenager, like 16, 17, 18 in there. Saturday morning, I always looked forward to getting out of bed. I slept on a big, deep feather bed that one of my relatives had made.
Wow.
And it was a whole lot of great satisfaction to get out of that bed and shake up that feather bed so that it was about like so, and look forward to being able to jump into it that night. And then the rest of Saturday was spent thinking what I was going to do that evening, getting prepared for it, doing my hair and my eyebrows. I used to pluck my eyebrows in those days. Lemon on the elbows. And getting ready to go out dancing. Saturday night was dance night.
What kind of dances?
This was in the late 40s, so it was the swing dances.
Wow.
I was a great jitterbugger. You never know it now, but that was one of my favorite things to do.
6 steps.
Jitterbug.
It's easy to follow and goes like this. Girl left, white, 1. Boy right, black, 1. Girl white, black, 2. A boy black, white. Girl boy brown, black. Oh, well, you see how it goes. Having learned the basic steps, you now forget them completely. To be a hep cat, you gotta practice.
I can't believe I've never seen you jitterbug.
Well, you didn't know me till later years. By which time your father did not approve of my dancing because he couldn't dance, and so sort of went by the board.
Wow, Saturday night dances. So were these town dances?
Yeah, they were town dances around Concord. Loudon usually had a dance. Other little towns around usually held, and it was all live music. The music that was played was usually a fiddle, a piano. I don't think drums were big in those days.
So who did you dance with?
Whoever turned up at the dance. A lot of guys went stag, and a lot of girls went stag, and we just all mingled.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, they don't have anything like that
They don't
anymore.
have that anymore. Well, maybe out in the country they do. I don't know what they do out in the real rural areas anymore. You see movies where it shows that kind of dance in Appalachia.
Yeah. How about Sunday?
Sunday was go to church day. My mother was very religious. Dad wasn't so much, but he usually went with Mother, and I went too. And then after church, sometimes we went to visit the relatives over on the farm, Well, you didn't know that. Dinner was usually at 2 o'clock. Later in the day, it was popcorn and listen to the radio.
So now, Shirley, your older sister, was she in the house at all when you were there? Did she ever
left
go to
when
church?
I was 8.
When you were 8,
So if she was going to church, I don't think she was going to church with us. I don't remember ever going to church with my sister.
Was she religious?
No, not really. None of her children went to church.
None of her children went to church. So Sundays, wow, it sounds like the typical Norman Rockwell kind of Sunday afternoon.
Jigsaw puzzles were a big part of my Sunday, too. I love doing jigsaw puzzles on Sunday afternoon. We had a big dining room and a big dining room table. And I would spread out my jigsaw and spend the day doing it.
So what age do you think that was?
Oh, that's before the teenage years, while my father was still alive. Dad died in 44. So, let's see, I was born in 31, so I would have been 8, 9.
8, 9. So you did attend church on Sundays. Where? Do you remember the name of the church you attended?
Emmanuel Chapel. It was about a block from our house. Oh, and the ministers, the ministers for that little chapel came from a seminary out of town and were rotated every year. And I fell in love with every one of them as they came. I think one year, one of them actually lived in our house.
Oh, yeah?
I think so.
Wow.
Don't remember exactly, but...
Now, was this the house that I visited in Tampa?
No. This was the house I grew up in. 34 Loudon Road in Concord, New Hampshire.
Concord, New Hampshire.
It still stands. It's a beauty parlor now.
Ah.
But
What's the address?
it was 34 Loudon Road. I think now it's probably changed. But my dad built that house.
Yeah, see, it's hard for me to, I can't picture it because I've never been in that house or pictures that you can even try to
I don't know
come
if
up
you
with.
even... when you were little, we probably drove by it and said, that's the house I grew up in.
When did your mom move to Tampa?
After I was married.
Oh.
We were married in 50. Probably about... Well, we were in Oklahoma. We went to Oklahoma in 1953. So probably she was married 1954, 55, and she moved to Tampa at that time.
Okay. How about Christmas? How do you spend Christmas?
Christmases were again, a Norman Rockwell Christmas. The relatives came from the farm. We put up the tree. Christmas Eve we filled candy bags and went shopping that Granite State candy shop is still open in Concord. Dad and I were there this past summer.
Oh, neat.
And we buy candy there and then fill up these mesh bags that Mother had made. And that's what we did Christmas Eve. I don't remember a lot of talk about Santa Claus. There must have been some.
So she had mesh bags in lieu of stockings?
Yeah, there were no stockings that I remember.
And when did you trim your tree? And
it may have been Christmas Eve day or the day before. We didn't have it up a long time. And I don't remember where we got those trees. They were always fresh trees. They didn't have artificial trees in those days.
So about how many gifts would you receive?
Not a lot. Nothing like what you guys
3,
got.
2, 3, 4?
No, maybe a dozen. And the relatives from the farm in Loudon always came for Christmas. But we didn't open our packages until after dinner. We had dinner about 2, a big Christmas dinner. Typical Christmas dinner. About 2, and then we opened the presents.
So it wasn't an early up,
No.
rush to the tree?
No, I don't remember Christmas mornings, really. I remember sitting on the stairs after everybody had gone, and it was still early evening, like about 4 or 5 o'clock, and feeling very let down, anticlimax after being up.
Yeah, the anticipation of Christmas.
Yeah, and then nothing.
And then it's over.
Yeah.
How about Easter? Your family observe Easter?
The thing I want to mention about Easter is sunrise services. I was big on sunrise services. They weren't in our church, in our chapel. They were usually someplace else. And I remember very clearly one Easter after I started dating your father, getting him to borrow somebody's car and we were driving out to the sunrise service. Got stuck in the mud because they were all in these rural churches. We got stuck in the mud and had to find a farmer to come pull us out. So that was Easter. No Easter bunny that I can recall. Not Easter candy. Different tradition.
The sunrise service was just on Easter.
It was an Easter sunrise service.
So you didn't make it to that sunrise
We didn't
service.
make it to that one. And I was crazy about them, so we must have made them to some. I must have been some that convinced me that I wanted to lure him out into the woods.
How and where did you observe 4th of July?
4th of July was fun. They always, like now, in Champaign, they always had fireworks at night, except it was at the airport in our case. There was plenty of room, and the airport was within walking distance of my house, so the teenagers went to the fireworks.
How do they compare to today's fireworks? Or they?
I can't tell you.
Is it the same kind of thing?
Same kind of thing, exactly the same kind of thing. As to quantity and quality, I have no idea. I remember my dad used to let me have firecrackers and put under a pipe plate and light them and watch the pipe plate go up in the air. But that's about it.
Yeah. Parades or
Oh
carnivals?
yeah, parades, thank you. Yeah, there was always a big neighborhood parade on Concord Heights, and the kids would decorate their bikes. But you know, I don't remember ever participating in a parade. I think I always just watched. I'm a big watcher.
Yeah, you never learned to ride a bike.
I never, no, mother always thought it was too dangerous.
So she was pretty protective.
We lived on what was then considered to be a busy street. She should see it now. She would not go out of the house now.
Did your family entertain often?
No. We were very much family oriented.
So a lot
And of course it was just me. So no.
Reunions and picnics then? Family reunions?
Yeah, we had reunions. That Memorial Day was always a big reunion when the folks from the beach, from York Beach, came over. And we would go to a graveyard where the other relatives were planted and clean up the grave sites, plant new flowers. And then we would always go mayflowering.
Yeah, why do you think you didn't keep up that tradition?
What's that?
Going to the memorial services because you're so far away now?
Yeah, because we
think if you were still in that town, you'd still be doing that?
Probably do a bit of it. Nothing like it used to be. I mean, it used to be a holiday, and the family looked forward to it. And it was a picnic too. There was always a picnic, but no, attitudes are just so changed now. It would just be very, very difficult to do the same thing. In fact, we couldn't even find the graveyard. Shirley and John and I drove around over in Loudon one night trying to find the graveyard.
Oh, you couldn't find it?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I wonder if it still exists.
The one we went to, I can't tell you. The one where my mother and father are buried still exists, but you have to know how to find it.
Wow.
I've got those instructions written down somewhere, by the way, so you guys can find it.
Yeah, what's the name of the cemetery?
I'll tell you in a minute. Soucook. Soucook. And it is, they've built new throughways there because of the NASCAR racing in Loudon.
Oh, really?
So the roads have all been torn up, and it's a little difficult to find, but you can get there.
Okay. We're going to move to education. What education did you get past high school?
Nothing for years, and then when I was 43, I think, I discovered college. Because I had been because Dad worked at universities all the time, I'd been in a lot of college libraries, and that's where I browsed around and did a lot of reading. But formal education didn't start until I went to Parkland College in 1974.
Do you feel like you self-educated for all those years that you missed?
To a certain extent, yeah, because, as I told you earlier, I was able to proficiency out of a lot of college courses, and that's when I started working to my bachelor's.
Did your family support you when you decided to go back?
Well, my family was long gone. Your dad supported me. And you guys, of course, were too young to have much to say about it.
What was the reason that you waited so long?
I was raising a family.
Who influenced you the most and helped you develop your skills?
Colleges. A couple of people. My very first instructor was a philosophy professor that did a lot to moving me along. If his attitude had been different, I might never have gotten as far as I got, but he supported me. And the other person was the woman I worked for, Judy Riggs.
Okay, would you choose the same career if you had to do it all over again?
Well, there again, I wasn't, because I started school as late as I did, I wasn't particularly interested in a career. I was an adult student, And I was able to study what I wanted to study. So I got my bachelor's in philosophy, which nobody can afford to do. There's no jobs in philosophy. So,
so the career was not the end result. It was the education itself.
And you know, when I was raising you kids, it was terrible misjudgment on my part. But I, honest to God, had no idea that the reason you went to college was to learn how to make your living. That never occurred to me. I thought you went to college to learn. I mean, this is stupid.
Well,
nobody ever told me they're supposed to go to college and learn how to live. I mean, how to make a living.
But don't you think that's a recent development of colleges? I mean, it used to be to go to college to learn.
Years ago.
Years ago, when colleges first started. It was about going to college to learn. It was basically the men going to college, right? Yeah. And then later, when women started, it was to get a husband. Yeah. But
or teaching, or library, or maybe I don't think nursing was part of it even then. But that changed. That's partly what my dissertation was on, was how this changed. It changed in the first half of the 20th century.
What was the name of your dissertation?
Oh, God. The name of it. I don't remember. But it was on Arthur Bester, who was a historian at the University of Illinois, who was deeply concerned that America was becoming very anti-intellectual. And they did. I mean, that whole trend that started... It started right at the turn of the century, I think, with some very influential people who were what C. Wright Mills called the power elite, the money, the background, and the powerful people. And they changed what was going on in the schools to move away from learning for learning, the sake of learning, into learning to make a living. Because they honestly believed, with all the immigrants in the country, they honestly believed that people weren't capable of learning the way they had in the past.
They felt that they were the exceptions.
Yeah, right, exactly. That social control was the aim of education.
And what year again did you get your PhD?
I'm not sure. I think it was around 91.
Around 91 at the age of about...
Let's see, I was born in 31, that would have been what? 60?
About 60, right?
Yeah, I was 17 years in school. Loved every minute of it.
Do you still read philosophy?
Only indirectly. No, the heavy reading in philosophy is not something I do anymore. I don't think the brain could take it.
Okay, is there anything else you want to
talk about now?
Want to add?
We've been talking quite a while. So anyway, I did end up with a career, as it turned out. I needed everybody wants to earn money, as it turns out in this world. So I ended up as a continuing education administrator, and it was a very satisfying one. I preached learning to all my students that I had, and everybody I worked with.
So it sounds like you've been able to be very true to yourself.
Oh, that's a good question. I think so. Not to the extent that I would have preferred, but very few people do.
But you started the interview saying that one of the things you valued most was the mind, and it seems as if your entire life has been pretty much filled with developing the mind. Learning so much.
Yeah, the life of the mind.
Right.
And an occasional stab of joy.
What day is today?
Let's start with today.
Today is August 2nd, 2010.
All right, and you just had your 80th birthday.
I had my 80th birthday, right, on July 6th.
On July 6th. All right, and we're sitting here at French Lake, Indiana, on the timeshare Villa 57.
Right. Can they hear you too?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. What were the names of your mother's parents? We're talking with Richard Lee Wentworth.
My father's father was, I don't remember his name, doggone it. He was in the band with Buffalo Bill's traveling.
Okay, that was your dad.
Wild West Circus.
That was your dad's dad.
My dad's father. Yeah, he probably was there from about somewhere around 1895 to maybe 1910 or so. Then he settled in Eau Claire, Wisconsin with his family of 5, including my dad. And he was head of 2 or 3 bands in town. And he died fairly young. And my grandmother took the children to Concord, New Hampshire, where everybody settled in.
How about your mother's parents?
My mother's father was named Joseph Wilcott, and he was French-Canadian, and I'm not sure what his occupation was. And her mother, I think, was also French-Canadian, and she died at age 50. She died young, and they had I think 7 children. So my mother had 2 or 3 brothers and 2 or 3 sisters.
Now, do you have any personal memories of any of them?
It's not very strong. I have personal memories of my father's sisters and brothers, all of whom I knew quite well and spent a lot of time in the area. The youngest, his youngest sister, Beverly, lived with us in our house for several years. She was not married until probably she was 45 or 50, and she lived with us in some of those years. My father's brother, Francis, was the second in charge at the Rumford Press, the printing division in Concord. And his sister, Dot, just lived a block away from us. And most of the family was in the immediate area. This was my uncle, my father's brother, Francis, and my father also worked at that same Rumford Press.
Is it printing press for?
Yes, they printed a lot of magazines, including Reader's Digest, Atlantic Monthly, and so forth. And they also printed hundreds of thousands of little booklets for GIs during the war. They're little books that fit in your back pocket.
Did you ever visit that press?
I haven't. I'm not familiar with the press inside, but it was the largest organization in town, the largest manufacturing, And my father started at age 18 and worked up to being a pressman, and then became the head of the press room, in charge of the press room, and then he became night superintendent and worked nights for many years. And then when the plant was taken over by a firm from New York, he was cut back to a pressman again, and then when he was 64, they fired him. They were making a switch from letterpress to offset printing, and so after all working there from 18 on to
18 to 64,
they fired him after demoting him twice.
Wow.
So it was not a happy experience for him.
Wow, that's so. Did he then not end up with retirement type money?
The union had only come in a couple of years before that, and people in the union, when they voted to unionize, did not make any account for the people who'd been there all these years, but only for those who were starting and would get it in the future. So his pension was something under $100 a month.
Wow.
And of course he became eligible for Social Security, so he lived on Social Security from 65 on, and he died when he was 70.
Wow. Now, was he living alone in that house at that time from 65 to 70?
He remarried. My mother died at 54 of cancer, and he remarried, and the woman that he married, his second wife, died of breast cancer probably when he was between 65 and 67, and then he lived alone.
Okay, so he was at the end. He was alone in the house.
Yes.
And he died of.
He died in 1974 at age 70.
At age 70.
My mother died the year that you were born, which was
62.
62.
Okay. What type of house was it that you grew up in?
Well, we had a fairly good-sized house. It had been built by my great-grandfather, whom I should have mentioned. In my father's side of the family, my grandmother's father was a Civil War veteran, and he built the house sometime in the 1880s after coming out of the Army. And
that was Frank?
the house, well, his name was Robinson. I don't remember his first name, but he lived until I was 3 years old, and lived in one of the rooms upstairs in our house. And my only memory over the years was that he gave me bananas and cough drops. But he is supposed to have built the house in the 1880s. It was...
and that was the house you grew up in from age what to what?
Until I went into the service at age 18. The house had no heat upstairs where the main bedrooms were, so my mother would give me one of these hot gadgets, whatever you call them, wrap it in a towel for my feet. And there was a little vent that came up. It was the only heat upstairs was what came in a small, maybe 6 inch by 12 inch vent from down in the living room.
Wow. Did you have a fireplace?
No, we had no fireplace, no.
Those were cold winters.
Yes, they were very cold winters. In the summertime, I maybe out of the numbered range here, but in the summertime I slept out in the tent from the time that I was 15 probably, where it was cooler. Had a big tent out in the yard.
That's right, I remember you saying that. So, like, what room of the house was the one where family gathered? Would that be the living room, the kitchen?
Yeah, I would say that such gatherings as there were, which are not memorable, were in the living room and the kitchen.
Did you sit down and eat dinner every night at the kitchen table? All eat together?
Well, because my dad worked at night a lot, there were not a lot of meals where everybody was there.
And your mom was probably not working at this time, right?
No, she didn't get a job until she was probably 50 years old. And there was a plant in town that she started working in.
Did you have a garden at your house? Did you grow any vegetables?
Yes, my father had a pretty good-sized garden. He grew corn and potatoes and beans and so forth. And the house had a big barn. It had a chicken coop where my mother raised chickens, and it had another outbuilding that was no longer used when I was a child, but I think I'm not sure if this was where they kept cattle or cow or something at one time. But when I was growing up, we did have chickens, but that's all. But it was quite a good-sized spread, and there were times when I'd want to be out playing ball, and my dad would have me digging potatoes. But he didn't make me do it that long if the kids were out there, because the ball field was right
where you could
next
see.
to our house here. Yeah.
So what other kind of chores did you have?
I really didn't have chores as such.
So who was your mom taking care of the chickens?
Yes, my mom would take care of the chickens. I would go get the eggs, come to think of it. Picked up the eggs every day. But she's the one that chopped the heads off and defeathered the chickens.
Wow.
She just dug an axe and had it out there and bam.
So you watched her do that?
Oh yeah, and as they say, the chickens do run around for 30 seconds or so with no head.
And that's right, huh?
Yeah, that is right.
How about, did she make her own cheese or butter?
No.
Okay. How did you observe the 4th of July?
Well, it was a lot of fireworks usually in our yard, and for a while the neighbors would get together, 4 or 5 neighbors, and would all chip in and buy fireworks and have a pretty large display. But the most memorable one for me was when my dad had a 4th of July party in the barn, and with a lot of beer, and 2 bald-headed guys stuck their heads together to make an asshole here. And my Uncle John was madder than hell at me because I was shooting off night fireworks in the daytime. And I hid away quite a few of them, and I hid them somewhere for future use.
So you could use them later.
Yeah.
Is that how old were you?
We also would go to fireworks that the town had. And the night before the 4th of July, there was a big bonfire when I was a teenager that was halfway down toward town.
So was that one of your favorite holidays?
Yeah, that was. When I was going with your mother at age 17, my Uncle John loaned me his car to drive down to the bonfire, and that was neat.
So that really stuck out in your mind. Where did you go to school?
We went to was called the Dame School for the first 3 grades. It was probably a little bit less than a mile away, and from grades 4 to 6 we went taken by bus over to East Concord, which was about 2 miles away, and went there until the middle of my 6th grade year, and then went back to the school that they had established after that. The grades 1 through 3 were in a big old building that was almost in your mother's backyard. That just behind her house, and they took that down and built a new one, and that we moved over to that, or I did, in the middle of 6th grade, and then 7th grade through 9 we took the bus to junior high, and the same also took the bus throughout high school.
So what age were you when you first met or knew of Mom?
I was 16, and that was in April of 1947, and I turned 17 that summer while I was the guard at the pool.
Okay, so you were high school age when you first met her, but you had gone to the same school?
Yeah.
Okay. Who was your best friend?
Junior Langevin was a great friend of mine. He lived next door. He was 3 years older. He took great care of me if we had problems with other kids. And he was a very good athlete who won pole vault in a high school meet, and could have been a really fine football player, but his mother forbade him to play because his younger brother broke a leg, an arm, in just a game that we were playing in the neighborhood. So she didn't let Henry play. He went in the Navy at age 17.
Wow.
And during the war, that would be 1944. And I would listen to the weekly results of the top 10 songs on the hit parade and write those down and send him the information. And he was on a ship in the Navy.
When was the last contact you had with him?
Well, unfortunately, after going in the service, there wasn't very much contact. He became a CIA agent and was overseas most of the time, and I saw him on one visit when we were both in Concord, but that was it.
Wow. So this guy was 3 years older than you. Was he a friend because he was so close, or were there a lot of kids your age around, and he just was
his brother, Normie, was the same age as me, but somehow it was Henry Jr. that was my best friend.
Do you play any organized games, or were they all just kind of neighborhood?
No, we had mainly neighborhood games, and we played a lot of baseball and football and hockey, and the skating rink was in the field out in front of our house and on land that we owned, and we played a lot of hockey. We played baseball out there. We played other teams from the area in other park districts once in a while, but I didn't play anything organized. I went out for football in the 9th grade, and I weighed not much. I'm not sure what. and they tried to make me a guard or a tackle instead of a fleet end, because in our games that we played in our own area, I was great at catching passes from Henry. I should have been an end. I was fleet end here, but they made me a guard or tackle, and I lasted only about 2 weeks. During that time, I had to walk home after practice, and that was over 2 miles. But normally we took the bus.
So that didn't last long.
My sports experience in high school was pretty slim.
Yeah, you've been playing sports your whole life, though. So it's all later after that. Now, you probably didn't do anything sports in college. Did you play extramural type courses or get up games with the guys in college?
No. Being married when I went to college and having a couple of jobs here, I didn't.
No time for sports.
Get it. Well, I had a lot of time for sports, but as a spectator and reporter rather than as a participant. And that's getting off your subject quite a bit.
But did you actually get paid to report at games? You were actually a game reporter?
Well, yeah. I was sports editor of the paper in my sophomore year, and then I was hired to work in the sports publicity department. And I did that for 3 years, including 1 year after I graduated. And that was in Bud Wilkinson era at Oklahoma, when the team won 47 games in a row, which is still the record. And I've spent that time in the press box, and 1 year keeping track of the running game, who ran, who tackled him, and how many yards, and so forth. We gave a report by each quarter to the reporters who were there. And then at the tail end, very memorably, in the game that broke the record when Notre Dame beat Oklahoma 7-0, I was down on the field and interviewed the coach, Bud Wilkinson, and asked him the stupidest possible question. Is it a kind of a relief to have that string over with? And he allowed us how it wasn't. That wasn't too good. He was a very great gentleman here. I was very impressed with him.
This has been part of your life continuously. Throughout your life, you played a lot of sports. You played tennis, you played softball, you run, you used to run.
In addition to the Oklahoma years, we were in Baton Rouge for the Pete Maravich years, and had front row seats for the
You actually have season tickets?
Games. We bought the tickets when he was a freshman, knowing that they were going to be tough to get, and we were able to get front row seats, a friend of mine and I. But in my 50s, I started playing softball at 56 and hit 2 home runs in my first game, but only one in subsequent years, because in those early games they had no fence, and I hit it past the outfielders who didn't run any faster than I did, so I was able to hit home runs while they were chasing the ball. Once they put in the fences, I only hit one over the fence. But in the 50s, I played golf, tennis, and softball, probably a total of 10 a week. I'd play golf at 6 in the morning and play softball in the evening, and regularly play tennis with somebody that I worked with. So in those years, I was quite a sports person here, in 50s into the early 60s.
So would you have a favorite sport first favorite sport that you enjoyed participating in?
Well, I would say tennis, softball. No, softball would be my favorite.
Softball was your favorite. How about as a spectator?
As a spectator, I've mostly been, I've been a fan of the Dodgers since I was 14 years old in 1944, when they finished 7th in an 8-team league. and have followed the Dodgers religiously ever since, and have cried many times. And, well, no, I didn't cry except when Bobby Thompson hit that stinking rotten home. When Bobby Thompson hit that stinking rotten home. When Bobby Thompson hit that stinking rotten home run in 1951. When Bobby Thompson hit that stinking rotten home run and beat the Dodgers in the playoff.
Take Me Out to the Ball Game, sung by Edward Meeker, Edison Record. Casey was baseball mad, had the fever and had it bad. Just to root for the hometown crew every Sue, Casey Blue. On a Saturday, her young beau called.
Brooklyn's faithful fans roar in salute and hope as the Dodgers take the field. Carl Furillo, who had hit a homer for the Dodgers' final run in the 1953 series against the Yankees, does it again, knocking the ball into the right field seats to open the second inning. After Hodges bounces out, Jackie Robinson slams a triple to left center. Duke Snyder, who hit 4 homers in the 1952 World Series, opens the Brooklyn third with a tremendous blow into the third tier in right field, and the Dodgers go ahead 3-2. With pinch batter Frank Keller at bat, Robinson dashes to the plate. It's close, and umpire Summers calls him safe on the daring maneuver, but Yogi Berra doesn't think so. And the fans will never forget the sight of Jackie Robinson preparing for the plate on his daring steal. Snyder drives him home with a single to right. The National League champions lead 1-0. Gilliam's base hit to left with 2 out in Brooklyn's 5th scores Robinson, and the Dodgers trail 4-2. And with 2 out, Campanella blasts a home run, his first hit of the series, and Brooklyn leads 2-0. The Yankee pitcher appears upset and walks Gilliam to force Robinson home and snap the tie. Jackie Robinson smashes a double to left field and races on to third when he decoys Howard into making a throw behind to second base. Amara singles and Robinson trots across the plate. 5. Rizzuto also pops up feebly to Gil Hodges, and Brooklyn's first victory is secure as Padres slams the door on any dramatic Yankee rally. With 1 out, Gilliam sends Amherst in motion with a hit-and-run signal and comes through perfectly with a double down the left field line. The fleet-footed Amherst scores all the way from first. The score is now Yankees 2, Dodgers 1. Duke Snyder slams another home run over the scoreboard in right center in the 5th inning to give Brooklyn a 4-1 lead. It's his 4th circuit smash of the 1955 series and his 9th in World Series competition. Robinson drives a ground single into center field, and Furillo scores to lengthen Brooklyn's lead 5-3. Stengel calls on Andy Carey to try. Snyder, with 2 home runs today, increased his National League record to 9 for World Series homers. Madras is out of a jam, and still no score in the game. One out in Brooklyn's fourth. Campanella doubles to the left field corner for his team's first hit. Campanella comes home when Hodges singles to left, and the Dodgers are out in front, 1-0. Gill hits a sacrifice fly to Bob Serve, scoring Reese, and the Dodgers have a 2-0 lead. There goes the drive down the left field line. And Sandy Amorous races for the ball, sticks out his glove just in time, and makes the catch. And McDougal has rounded second base. He throws to Reese. And Reese's peg to Hodges doubles McDougal at first. Let's have another look at that spectacular play. World Series record. And Padres. Elston Howard sends a grounder to Pee Wee Reese. And these Dodgers at last are world champions. Delirious with joy, teammates and fans mob the Brooklyn pitcher in wild acclaim. In the Dodger clubhouse is the pandemonium only a great victory can generate. And setting the zany pace are Gil Hodges, Duke Snyder, and Don Newcomb. This is Brooklyn's greatest baseball day. Newspapers shriek the tidings.
And I was in the Air Force in a busy room where maybe 50, 20 people were working, and we could see it or hear it, and I just broke into tears when that happened. But I followed the team awfully close over the years and have sweated that out. Other than that, college basketball has been my main interest in recent years, although football was very big in Oklahoma years and LSU years, where LSU had outstanding teams as well when we were in that.